presidential call.
So what's next for Mike Pompeo? Well, for a proud Kansan or a proud Kansas transplant like Mike Pompeo, there is no place like home, and he's reportedly considering a move back to Kansas to run for Senate, something President Trump seems to be encouraging. Meanwhile, another one of the president's men made news last week. Attorney General Bill Barr under fire from some conservative lawyers for his defense of President Trump. One of them, former solicitor General Charles Freed, who told the New York Times this: conservatism is respect for the rule of law, it's respect for tradition. The people who claim they're conservatives today are demanding loyalty to this completely lawless, ignorant, foul-mouthed president. So with two of Trump's closest allies in the spotlight, where does that leave the president? Katie Benner joins us now. She covers the Justice Department for the New York Times. And Katie, let's start with Bill Barr, make our way to Mike Pompeo, if we could. There was this extraordinary speech by the Attorney General at the Federalist Society's conference in Washington, D.C. a few days ago. Received a lot of coverage and criticism. This was an Attorney General going beyond what past Attorney Generals have said. And I should say that speech comes on the heels of another one that he delivered at Notre Dame, a speech on religious liberty, which was also criticized as something that was beyond the pale, something that we haven't seen before. What does it tell you? What does it tell us about this Attorney General?
Sure. Well, according to these conservative lawyers who identify as Republican and Libertarian, they feel that what Bill Barr is doing is he's laying the legal groundwork for what would be considered a more authoritarian view of what the president can do. They disagree with this. They think that the Constitution very clearly lays out a system of checks and balances where each branch is able to keep the other in check, in line, and have oversight over the other. They say that what Bill Barr has laid out in his speeches is a world in which the president, the executive branch, have almost unlimited authority, and that in this reading, the Constitution lays out the duties of each branch, but does not actually seek to impose checks on top of the executive.
Katie, when you look at that statement and who signed on to it, George Conway is on there, but you also have Charles Freed, who's an eminence grise of Harvard Law, somebody who spoke out just a few months ago on Chris Hayes' show here on MSNBC rather forcefully against what the President, the Attorney General have been doing. What does that mean, having those names attached to a document like this?
I think that these attorneys, they represent sort of the other side of a conflict that's been brewing within the Conservative Party, within the Republican Party. What does it mean to be a conservative and what does it mean to be a Republican? We've seen publicly senators and congressmen all fall in line behind Donald Trump and say that what the president is doing is now the Republican Party. But off to the side, there are scholars, there are attorneys, and there are others who have been deeply disturbed by this shift. And now we are seeing those voices emerge, especially, you know, George Conway has been a constant critic, but other folks who have had a lower profile are also coming to the fore. They're saying, what we want is we want a return to a conservative ideal. We want smaller government. We want less spending. We want a world in which, you know, while we believe in strong executive power, we don't let people run what they would say would be running amok. And it will be interesting to see which voice prevails, not only in the election, but after the election, if Trump were to win again, which version of the Conservative Party will come out.
David Jolly, I imagine that these folks are speaking your language. If you look at that statement, see the criticisms that they're making. And I think that what Katie points out so well in the piece is that he gave this speech, Bill Barr gave this speech at the Federalist Society, perhaps not wholly unexpected given his views as he's espoused them in the past, in documents and memos that he's written, unsolicited memos that he's written to folks in the Justice Department. But what's novel about it is it got parroted on Capitol Hill. That what he said about the impeachability of what the president did is something that we now hear emulated by, repeated by folks on Capitol Hill who are defending this president.
And the danger. And what these lawyers are doing right now is pulling the fire alarm on Bill Barr. And this is very serious. You know, we have always seen the struggle between the executive branch and legislative branch. The founders intended to pit ambition versus ambition. They knew these branches would try to grab more power. Anecdotally, in modern political history, you consider Bush and Guantanamo, that was grabbing executive authority. Barack Obama with DACA by executive order. He said, I don't even know if I have the constitutional authority to do it, but I'm doing it. The federal government under enforcing federal marijuana laws. All these decisions are routine. What Bill Barr is doing, which is dangerous and new, is suggesting that the president is above the law. And he's doing it by saying the Department of Justice cannot indict a sitting president. So the president is no longer accountable to the Department of Justice and the executive branch. And he's arguing the administration is constitutionally immune from accountability by the Congress. What these attorneys are saying is, Mr. Barr, you're going too far. This is not about executive authority. This is about removing a president from any accountability. That's the danger we face when we reach these comparisons of authoritarianism.
Let me move to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And Hayes, you were saying during the break, when this cache of documents came out on Friday night, you poured over him, you looked at what was in there. How does it change the narrative here? This is a Secretary of State who has been quiet on these issues, shall we say, not answered questions during pool photos. He's been traveling in Brussels. Spent a lot of time in Kansas as well, I should say. But what is it? How does it change his position?
So he's tried to keep out of the spotlight, especially since it's amazing that he's the one who's more in danger now when Bill Barr's name is the one that was in the transcript that was released on September